KOF 15 has been out for more than a couple of weeks, and now that the hype around the game has subsided a bit, I think it is the perfect time to make an honest review of SNK's latest installment of their flagship series. I'm going to explain things as if you're all new to KOF, so to the veterans out there, bear with me please. Comparison with other games in the series, especially 13 and 14, are unavoidable. I think it's the perfect way to assess what 15 does better and what doesn't. Also, keep in mind that this is my personal thoughts and subjective point of view, so you may not agree with me on everything, and that's totally fine. The last thing I want to specify, I didn't receive any copy from SNK and I'm not sponsored in any way. I'll put aside my fanboy of the series side during this video, so that my review of KOF 15 can be as honest and unbiased as possible. But before that, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe and click the bell icon so you can be notified with every new video posted. The story of KOF 15 is a direct sequel to 14's. It follows the main protagonist of the saga, Shun'ei, and his fiery new rival, Isla, as they're faced by otherworldly creatures who seek their mysterious powers. In the meantime, Hydern, helped by a newcomer, the shaman Dolores, track those creatures, whom the appearance is somehow tied to the King of Fighters tournament. Of course, all teams have their own motivations, some are darker and more serious than others. Without getting into much details, as I intend to make a separate story explained video, the story is pretty good overall. It even managed to surprise me at some points. Special mention to the final boss, she is frightening and intimidating. Her design is a lot better than Verse from 14, that's certain, and she also has her own twist during the fight. I wish if each team has its own introduction at the start of the story campaign. I would have loved to know more about these characters and their motivations for entering the competition beforehand. It's weird that SNK didn't include such an idea, especially that Samurai Showdown had an introduction cinematic for each character. Maybe that could be included in a future patch. Is it too much to ask? If not, hopefully KOF 16 will flesh out the characters' backstories better. Speaking of KOF 16, I guess its story could be a continuation of this saga. KOF 15's story does have a sort of conclusion, but there are still many unanswered questions. Like where did Shun'ei and Isla's powers come from? Or who is Anastasia, the host of KOF 15? We never got to see her actually. I'm not even sure if we should care about her. Also, the final boss is technically still alive, so she might still return in the future. All that leads me to think that there is more to Shun'ei's story. Let's make one thing clear already. The graphics are a huge step up compared to 14's. Now if you remember, this particular subject was among the main criticisms, if not the most criticized thing in 14. Many consider them worthy of the PlayStation 2 era. While this comparison is a bit unfair and exaggerated, especially with 14's updated patch that significantly improved the look of all characters, I can understand it. KOF 14's graphics weren't its selling point, even if they didn't bother me personally. KOF 15 shows that SNK learned their lesson. They are clearly more comfortable with 3D modeling, something that was already proven with 2019 Samurai Showdown. They also seem to have learned some tricks with that game, since the general graphical style is very similar in both games. KOF 15 follows a more artistic approach for its character models, as opposed to the somewhat realistic one in the previous game. Every figure has this black outline surrounding them, giving them a more cartoonish identity. It's not as pronounced as in Samsho, but it's visible enough to give the game its own identity. But you should remember, this is still a 3D game. If you decided to skip 14 just because it no longer has those beautiful 2D sprites from 13, you're still not gonna like the graphics in 15. I do recommend to give this game a chance though. You may change your mind when you realize how these 3D models are very faithful to their original 2D sprites. Also, 13 wasn't perfect graphically either. I said it before and I'm saying it again, some characters look a lot better in 3D than they did in 13. Fight me. While I'm personally in love with the artistic style and adore how these characters look, I wish I could say all fighters receive the same level of care. Unfortunately, some unlucky models were botched. Case in point, Whip and Maxima. Their models, especially their heads and faces, are just bad. Whip looks like a lifeless doll with her dead eyes, and Maxima had almost become a giant gorilla with his weirdly disproportionate head. I don't know what happened. These two definitely looked better in 14 or in any other game honestly. I hope they'll benefit from a makeover with a future patch. When it comes to the sound effects, I'm happy to report that everything is in order. Punches and kicks sound crunchy and have an oomph to them. They offer a very satisfying feeling. I need to emphasize this because there was one game in the series that completely dropped the ball in this area, and that was enough to ruin the game for many players. No need to worry now, it is certainly not the case in 15. I mean, just listen to Ralph's devastating punches sound. This guy is waging a whole war just by himself. Even the stages have sound effects specific to them. Like, notice how the sound of the footsteps change when you walk on that wooden board in the construction site stage. Or how the public react to Clark's Argentine backbreaker. It's super neat. That brings us to the music of this game. I can confidently say that it is certainly of a much higher quality than in 14. The themes of each team are so good in 15. Some of them had already become classic in my repertoire. The Secret Treasures, Cronins, or the superhero themes, they are such a delicious treat for the ears. It's SNK music in its best form. Old themes are also present in brand new remixes, and you can hear them most of the time during those fateful encounters between characters. Again, super good stuff. I want to give a special mention to the announcer of KOF 15. He plays a big role in making the matches feel so hype and exciting. The game does take place during a fighting tournament, so the presence of an announcer makes a lot of sense. He also gives some neat details about each point character in the story mode, a great way to learn a little bit more about the multiple KOF figures. But sometimes his commentaries feel out of place. Like during the story mode, when the final boss, who nobody was expecting to see, attacks the winners after teleporting them into another dimension. Yet somehow, our good friend is still following the action. Not only that, he knows exactly who Otoma Raga is and what she's called.
The goddess of truth, Otoma Raga, stands in the way!
My favorite part is when he asks the spectators to ask her how she won if she defeats the player.
If you want to know how to win, this is the person to ask!
As if she's gonna answer that before she destroys the world. It's really weird, and I think it's a huge oversight from the developers. They should have just made him shut up at that point. It's not a major problem by any means, but it does take away from the seriousness of the situation. Outside the story mode, his remarks are not always poignant either.
Player 2 needs a miracle!
What do you mean I need a miracle? I still have the life lead. I don't hate him. I think he's a good addition, he just needs extra polish. Moving on to the animation, KOF 15 benefits from some good stuff here. Characters' moves are smooth and include plenty of subtle little details. The way the hair sways when the character jumps, how the clothes and accessories move with each hit, how each punch of Yashiro's super look different and has its own animation, something you won't even notice at normal speed. Those are just some examples of the level of quality that the animation has in this game. The facial animation during cutscenes and special intros are also pretty good. The fighters talk and interact in a much more convincing way than they did in 14. Speaking of the intros, they are dynamic and fully animated in 15. Gone are the still camera angles of 14 or the voiceless dialogues of 13. I just wish if there was more of them. Also, at the start of a match, the first character of each match has a special intro animation, but not everything is perfect in this subject either. Like with the models, the animation can be inconsistent from a character to another. Take the climax supers for instance. Many fighters saw their level 3 desperation moves updated. The new ones are arguably a lot better looking. However, the others are stuck with the same climaxes from the previous entry, and many of those start to look a bit outdated. The problem doesn't end there. Some awkward looking special moves from 14 still look just as awkward and weird in 15 without benefiting from any update. I'm looking at you, Robert, and your Gen Yikiaku. In general, the characters who were not in 14, like Shizuru, Cronin, Ash or the Orochi team, have all top-notch animation. You can tell that the developers spent more time refining their moves. On the other hand, the rest of the roster is divided into two groups. There are the fan favorite super popular figures like Kyo, Iori, Terry, Mai and others. They also benefited from refined animation and in many cases new climax supers. And finally, there are the others who draw the short straw and got the minimum care and attention to their moves. Rest assured though, it is not a deal breaker by any means, and the difference is not big enough to create a dissonance among the roster, but it is noticeable as far as I'm concerned anyway. Let's put the characters aside and focus our gazes to the many beautiful stages that the game offers. They are packed with details and references to other SNK games. The beach as an homage to Terry's stage in Fatal Fury, or the Metal Slug themed stage of the Ikari Warriors. Some of these stages have alternative variations. I just wish if they were dynamic, as in they change between rounds. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But each team is associated with a specific stage, and I always support that in fighting games. The last thing I want to touch on in the graphics area are the special effects. Some players find them a bit exaggerated and distracting. I personally don't think so. They didn't bother me at all. I find them beautiful and pretty well done. I was surprised when I saw the fabrics of King's shirt falling after defeating her. The level 1 and 2 supers have blue and red special effects respectively. It was already the case in older games. In KOF 15, the effect is more stylized, the screen freezes and the colors get inverted for a second. I believe KOF 2000 was the first game to utilize a similar effect during level 2 supers. It's present in 15 as well and looks sick. Now it's time to talk about the most important aspect of any fighting game, the gameplay. The KOF series is team-based. You pick 3 characters and you fight against other teams composed of the same number of fighters. Before each match, you get to choose the order of your characters. This is very important since some characters are better on point and others reach their full potential as mids or anchors. You should also take into consideration your power gauge. The first character can only have up to 3 bars, the second 4, and the last one can have up to 5 bars. When you win a round, you'll get to fight against the next character of the opposite team. You'll also regain some of your life bar back, depending on how fast you beat your opponent. This is nothing new in 15. Most KOF games work like this, with the exception of 2003 and 11, which had a tag system. But other than these 2 games, the rest of the installments follow this formula. If I have to describe KOF 15's gameplay, I'd say it's a mix of 13s and 14s. Much like 13, you can perform EX moves, stronger variation of the special moves, and you do that by spending some of your power gauge. You know, this bar that exists in pretty much all fighting games that fills up when you deal or take damage and allows you to do supers and other stuff. The EX moves in KOF 15 consume half a bar, unlike in 13 where they consumed a full bar. The EX moves existed in 14 as well, but you needed to activate a max mode first, which I will explain what that is in a moment. EX moves are a very strong tool. Most of the time, they give the possibility to extend combos, and because you no longer need to be in a max mode to execute them, gives an automatic buff to all characters. Everyone is a lot stronger than they were in 14. To balance things a bit, the power gauge fills up slower than it did in previous games. The max mode is still present in KOF 15 with its raw and quick variations. To activate a raw max mode, you only need to press the B plus C buttons. A timer will show up telling you how much time you still have before the max mode is over. During this interval, your character, engulfed in a blue aura, deals more damage. EX moves no longer consume bars, instead they take a chunk from the timer. The twist in 15 is that the supers, called desperation moves in KOF, don't automatically end the max mode like in previous games, meaning it is possible to perform level 1 supers and still have the max mode activated after they're executed. Quick max mode works similarly with some distinctions. Differentiated with a pink aura, they offer no damage buff and their time is shorter, but can be done in the middle of a combo, which is really what they're all about, extending combos. The thing with the quick max modes in 15 is the fact that the action freezes for a very short time during activation. Think of it as the V-trigger system in Street Fighter V. This little detail is a game changer for me personally. The short time stop allows me to follow the action easily and focus on landing my combos successfully. I used to drop quick max mode combos all the time in the past, but now I manage to perform them more consistently and I love it. In 15, both max modes consume 2 bars as opposed to 1 bar in 14. This is a huge deal. It was clearly SNK's response to the criticism that 14 had, which was the over-reliance on max modes. In that game, 1 bar max mode combo can deal about 40 to 50% damage, assuming you mastered your combos and didn't drop them all the time like myself. A double down B into max mode activation into a devastating combo was the common sight. The gameplay during rounds and matches looked pretty much the same. All this is old story now. With the 2 bars requirement for an activation in 15, you're unlikely performing more than 1 max mode activation per round. With that said, you may think that max modes became useless in KOF 15, but that is far from the truth. Granted, you can do a lot of damage with super lengthy combos without activation, but max modes still play a huge role. Let me explain. Remember when I told you that supers don't automatically end in max mode? That means you can perform a max mode combo that includes level 1 and level 3 supers with only 3 bars. And let me tell you, the damage with some characters is insane. Max modes, especially the quick ones, are the most efficient way to deal the maximum damage with minimum meter. They're also a good incentive to execute climax supers more often. In 14, you could rarely see an advanced player performing level 3 supers, simply because it wasn't worth the waste of meter. Why spend 3 bars when you can practically do more damage with 1 bar? That's one thing KOF 15 had fixed in the most genius way possible. The way the meter management was updated is simply flawless, and I applaud whoever came up with it. So yes, max modes are still relevant, they just work differently than they did in 14. You better make sure to land your max mode combos though, because if you miss, you probably won't have a second chance during that round. But if you succeed, admire the carnage you dealt your opponent. The newest feature introduced in KOF 15 is the Shutter Strike, or as I used to call it during the game trailers, the counter purple CD thing. To perform it, you need to do a quarter circle forward plus CD, and what it does is that it turns your CD into an armored attack that ignores an incoming attack from your opponent. If the Shutter Strike hits a standing foe, it will cause them to crumple, whereas if they were jumping, they will wall bounce. The Shutter Strike consumes a full bar, but you'll regain half of the bar back if the attack lands. This new feature is mainly a defensive tool, but it can be used in the middle of a combo as well. In this case, it will give you the opportunity to extend the combo. That's not possible if you execute its raw state against the standing enemy. Even if they crumple, they will recover after your first hit. Overall, it's a neat new mechanic, even though I tend to forget about its existence most of the time. Not just me actually, most players I fought online rarely use it as well. I guess we're still not used to it yet. That and DX moves seem to be a better option to use your meter, both offensively and defensively, as they always cost half a bar no matter what. Things may change in the future, however, if high-skilled players start using it in a more efficient way and show us noobs how it's done. The last thing I want to touch on in the gameplay is the return of the auto combos, also known as rush combos. By pressing the A button repeatedly, your character will execute an automatic combo that ends from a special move to a level 3 super, depending on how much meter you have and what fourth button you pressed. Now here's the thing, rush combos existed in 14 and they didn't bother me that much, but in 15 I despise them. I hate them to my very core. They are so infuriating and unfair. In 14 they couldn't end with a climax super, but now they could and they will. There is nothing more frustrating than doing your best trying to pull out decent combos just to be destroyed by a rush combo from your opponent who all they had to do was to mash the A button mindlessly. I can hear you saying, why not use them too instead of complaining? Well, I don't want to. I want to play KOF properly. Landing a delicate to execute combo has a much more rewarding feeling. I know if I use rush combos, I won't feel any satisfaction. They're so cheap. I don't just wanna win, I wanna have fun. Rush combos are not fun, they're dumb. So I never use rush combos in online matches because of, let's call it foolish pride. But at the same time, I'm not good enough of a player to prevent my opponent from constantly destroying me with them. And so I always feel in a disadvantage because of this stupid feature. Do you relate to what I just said, or am I a unique case? Anyway, F rush combos. KOF 15 would have been a better game without them. At least give us the option to disable them. I want to press standing A without the risk of pulling them out accidentally. The next big thing in any fighting game is its roster. KOF 15 offered 39 characters in total. Not the biggest roster, especially for KOF standards, but it's not a small one either. Well, if you compare it to the last game of the franchise with its 50 characters at launch, it's definitely a step back. But I would argue that 15 goes for quality over quantity, and that was achieved by bringing back a lot of fan favorite figures. Chizuru, Ash, Elizabeth, the Orochi team, and even freaking K49 named Cronin now, they're all back. I was already sold when I saw Yashiro, Chris and Shermie making their long-awaited return. With 15's mechanics, they are as fun to play as ever. Unfortunately, their alternative versions are not available, which is a shame. I'm a huge fan of Grappler Yashiro, so it saddens me not to see him here, but I bet they'll be available as future DLC. Few new faces in 14 made their return as well. That game had 18 new characters, and I didn't even count Dinosaur and Nakururu. Granted, not everyone among them was a success, but the most important and memorable ones returned in 15. Of course, the saga's main hero, Shun'ei, is here, along his best friend Meitenkun, forming the hero team with good old Benimaru. Antonov, the host of the previous KOF, is back in a flashy new design with King of Dinosaurs / Chizok and Ramon. Loong is part of the Secret Agents team with Blue Mary and Vanessa, and Kukri, the infamous trash talker, is also part of KOF 15. As for the characters exclusive to 15, we have Shun'ei's new rival Isla, arguably a much better Shun'ei than Shun'ei. The other character is Dolores, literally a watered down version of Kukri. Seriously, she is very strong and extremely fun to play. Obviously, the legacy characters are almost all back as well. Kyo, Iori, Athena, the Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting teams, the Ikari band, they are all here. One thing that KOF 15 surprised its fans with is the new team arrangements. With very few exceptions, all classic teams were shuffled just like in KOF 11 before it, which did a similar thing to its roster. However, many beloved fighters didn't make the cut for the initial roster. Characters like Yamazaki, Vice, Mature, Geese, and the most shocking one of them, Kim. Additionally, Regal Bernstein, the charismatic villain of the series, is also absent. A big letdown if you ask me, especially with the hints of his return in 14. It's noteworthy that many of the aforementioned characters are confirmed as future DLC. We already know the Team Garou, including Rock, Gato and Jene, plus Team Southtown with Geese Billy and Yamazaki are joining KOF 15 in the next few months. 2 additional teams are also announced for the game, even though we still don't know who they are, officially speaking. Expect by the end of the year the roster of KOF 15 will jump to 51 characters in total. Let's cut to the chase. The single player mode content in 15 is rather basic. There's your classic arcade/story mode. When you finish it with an official team, you get the specific ending for that same team, in addition of 1 super credits. And that's pretty much it. No artworks like 14, no alternative costumes, which by the way are exclusive to only 2 characters for now, Terry and Leona. KOF 15 is disappointing in terms of single player mode content. I wish if the story mode was richer, something akin to what the latest Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat games did, switching between multiple characters in a main story mode that is separate from the arcade mode would have been pretty cool. The rewards you unlock from completing the game are also lackluster, an ending of each team in the gallery and that's it. I wonder what happens to shattering our expectations. Speaking of the gallery, at its very bottom you'll find a special animated short that can be considered as the game's intro cinematic. What bugs me the most is the fact that this clip doesn't play when you boot the game the first time or in any time. I mean, what the heck? Why did you even bother making this awesome cinematic that was directed by none other than Masami Obari, the very same person behind the legendary Fatal Fury movies, if you're just going to hide it like you're ashamed of it? I don't understand. You do realize that a lot of players won't even see it where it's hidden now. Come on already, give us a patch that makes it play before the title screen each time with the possibility to skip it. I'd watch it in its entirety each time personally. Not everything is doom and gloom in terms of content, thankfully. In addition of the tutorial that is perfect for newcomers to get familiarized with the basics of the KOF series, the mission mode makes a comeback from 14 as well. In it, you will be required to execute combos for each character. The combos are categorized in levels that obviously get harder with each passing one. It is a must play if you intend to main a character and you want to know what he or she can do. And then there is the DJ station, arguably the best feature that the game has to offer in the single player mode. In this menu, you'll find tons of timeless themes and songs, not only from the KOF series, but also from other SNK franchises. But you have to unlock the different albums first by completing the story mode with secret teams. The DJ station also gives the possibility to customize the themes for all stages in all modes, with the exception of the story mode. I adore this feature. I even made a short video just to talk about it. I wish if you could associate a theme to a specific character and not just a stage. But oh well, the DJ station still rocks. If the single player mode is a bit lacking, and I don't mean unfinished, just nothing really expectation shattering, the same thing cannot be said for the online. Simply put, KOF 15 has the most complete online in the whole series. Using the rollback netcode, the online matches are much smoother and a lot of fun. Something that previous SNK fighters were lacking desperately. You can tell that they greatly focused on the game's online just by looking on how much space the online section takes in the main menu. In this section, you'll find your regular ranked matches. You gain a star each time you win a match, but you also lose one if you're defeated. Gather 5 stars and you're promoted to the next rank. There is a daily bonus in the form of gaining 2 stars after your first win without losing any star after your first loss. The casual matches work pretty much like the ranked ones, except that there are no stars involved and your rank is not affected by the outcome of your matches. Then there are the different rooms where you can join or invite other players. Of course, you can create your own room and invite your friends in it. The rooms offer different twists that change how KOF is played normally. You can choose to play a single players only if you wish. Join a party game where you and 2 other players will choose 1 character each and play as a team against another team. The most original mode in my opinion is draft mode, where you can't have mirror characters. You get to pick your first character, then your opponent get to pick 2 characters. Then it's your turn again to pick your second, then it's your opponent's, and finally you choose your last fighter. Any chosen character cannot be picked again by the other player as explained earlier. Of course, you can also just play a regular old-fashioned KOF match if you're not interested in these modes. The online has one other addition to it, and that's the online training. Unfortunately, I can't say much about it. I couldn't find any room dedicated to this mode, and nobody was interested in joining me when I created my own. I guess nobody is interested in KOF 15's online training. There is one thing that bothered me with the online, and it is the input delay. Because of it, I lost many easy rounds. True, I don't have the best internet connection, but I don't think my connection is the only thing to blame here. It's not a major issue, since most of the time I had a smooth experience, but it is a matter that needs to be addressed. All in all, the online of KOF 15 is a huge improvement over the ones from the last entries, and it's certainly one of its main selling points. You don't want to skip on this. One important question to have is how the game performs. I need to specify that I played the game only on the base PlayStation 4, aka the console of the poor. From what I can tell, KOF 15 is identical on all platforms, save for some minor differences. I noticed that stages are livelier with additional NPCs and other special effects on PC and new-gen consoles. The loading times are just as long as they were in 14. In other words, pretty short. They're definitely nothing like samurai showdowns, and I assume they're even shorter in the newer platforms. I mean, you can change your character in the training mode without going back to the select screen. Not only that, you can also change the stage and pick a different theme from the DJ station, all while still being in the training mode. That just shows how well optimized the game is. Everything played smoothly. I didn't notice any drop in frame rate, never had any crash, and didn't run into any bug or glitch during my long hours of gaming. Since the release of the game, I've been asked the same question from many of you. Where would I put KOF 15 in the ranking KOF games from worst to best video? It's not a simple question to answer, but let's try doing that anyway by comparing the latest installment to its big brothers one at a time. I think we can all agree that this is easily one of the top 5 best entries in the franchise. From there, can we say it's better than 13? Personally, I think it is. 15 has a much better roster. I mean, it has the Orochi team for crying out loud. The gameplay is arguably also better. With the return of the EX moves independently from the max mods, combos can be long and intricate, but not stupidly long like they were in 13. You also don't have to manage 2 separate power gauges, something I wasn't a huge fan of in 13. The latter may have an advantage in the graphics area with its gorgeous 2D sprites, but in my opinion, they weren't flawless either, especially with the questionable design of some characters. Let's move on to 14. Is 15 a better game? Absolutely. The roster may not be as big, but what 15 loses in quantity gains in quality. Plus, the roster is far from complete right now. Who knows, it may even become bigger than 14's. Also, the 3D graphics are an undeniable step up, and the gameplay fixes almost all the issues that the prequel had, except for those freaking rush combos. And let's not forget the vastly superior online with its rollback netcode. Now, what about 98? That's a very tricky comparison. You see, 98's strongest point, aside from being a major hit that raised the bar too high for all its follow-ups, is how well it aged. Even over 20 years from its release, it's still a blast to play and to look at with those timeless graphics and sprites. We simply don't know how 15 is going to age. It has better graphics for now, but how good they're gonna look in 5 or 10 years from now, it's too early to say which game is the better one. And finally, is it better than 02UM? Without beating around the bush, I'd say no, it's not. 2002 UM has the largest roster in all KOF series, but it's not just quantity like in 14, it's also quality. All the fighters are charismatic, enjoyable and fun to use. No matter what your playstyle is or what archetype you prefer, you're bound to find what you like among them, not to mention the beautiful arts that each character has. As for the gameplay, it's classic KOF gameplay at its best. It's a lot harder than 15's for sure. Combos are much more difficult to pull off, but that can be both a positive thing or a shortcoming depending on who you ask. KOF aficionados will probably say that the hard-as-nailed gameplay is the best. They already missed the hair pulling to execute supers from the past games. For others, 15's gameplay is better. It's obviously easier, the easiest in the whole series I would add. Not to say it's mindless, it's easy for KOF standards. Personally, I have a slight preference for 15's gameplay because it's more fun, accessible, and I'm a filthy casual. 15 has one clear advantage over O2UM, and that is the story. It's a canon game, and there is incentive to play and finish the story mode with official and secret teams. The single player content is a lot better overall, not the richest, but still richer than O2UM. The latter is a dream match and has no story whatsoever. The accessibility of 15 also plays a major role and is the best starting point for new fans to the series. Really, the only thing that O2UM has over 15 is the roster and the gameplay for some, but it is a thing susceptible to change in the future. If SNK decides to keep supporting the game by adding new characters, new stages, new costumes, improving the gameplay, refining the online, and nerfing these two, then KOF 15 might actually surpass O2UM. Bottom line, and to answer the question in the title, is 15 the best KOF yet? The answer is no, but it has the potential to be. Thanks for watching this review till the end. It was a long video. I tried to be as thorough as possible in order to give the most accurate picture of KOF 15, just in case you're still hesitating and haven't picked the game yet. As always, special thanks to my patrons for their generous support. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and why not consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.